for patriot dream that sees beyond the years. Thine alabaster cities gleam, undimmed by human tears. America, America, God shed his grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, for purple mountain majesties above the fruited plain. America, oh, America, God shed his grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. Yeah.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in today to our Auditions question and answer live stream. I'm your host, Staff Sergeant Justis MacKenzie. I'm the music arranger and social media manager for the United States Air Force Band of the West, and we're so thrilled to have you with us today. I'm joined by our auditions team, Staff Sergeant Michele Von Haugg, Airman First Class Leah Fox, and Senior Airman Ed Knoeckel. If you wouldn't mind, the three of you, if we could, let's hear a little intro, maybe where you're from and how you got to be where you are. Michele.
Well, hi, everybody. Thank you, Justis. It's really great to be here today. I am from a small town in upstate New York called Eastburn, if anybody's heard of it. So I did my undergraduate degree out in that area at Ithaca College, and then I did my master's degree at the New England Conservatory in Boston, and now I'm out here in San Antonio, Texas with my 3-year-old and my husband.
Thanks, Michele. And just to her left on top, you see Airman First Class Leah Fox. Welcome, Leah.
Hi, everyone. I'm Airman First Class Leah Fox. I am from Erie, Pennsylvania. I went to undergrad at Otterbein for a year for voice performance and then transferred to Point Park University for musical theater. And I spent the last 10 years-ish or so in New York City doing the Broadway Off-Broadway gig. And I saw an advertisement and thought, what an amazing adventure. And all of those roads led me right here to San Antonio, Texas.
Well, thank you so much for being with us today. And lastly, on bottom, one of our fantastic piano players, Senior Airman Ed Knoeckel. Hi, Ed.
Hi, Justis. Thanks so much for having us here today. Looking forward to the discussion. I'm from Manchester, Connecticut, and I was a high school music teacher and in the Army National Guard Band for 8 years before moving on to a doctoral program at George Mason University. After which I met a number of Air Force musicians and was inspired to audition for a spot with the regional bands. Lord blessed me with a favorable audition, and here I am at San Antonio Lackland Air Force Base with the fantastic musicians of the Band of the West.
Thank you, Ed. And as I mentioned, the three that you see in front of you are our auditions team. These are the three responsible for making sure that folks know about our auditions, here to answer all of your questions that you might have about auditioning for or being a part of the United States Air Force bands. So if you think of any questions you have about the audition process, about the job, really anything related to the Air Force bands, go ahead and leave your questions in the comment section and we'll be able to answer them live on air here. Or if you're watching this as a replay, please feel free to leave your comments your questions in the comment section anyway, and we'll have one of these three fantastic airmen respond to you as soon as possible. So the first question on the agenda for today would be the most basic, and that is, how do you even find out about the auditions?
Well, I'll take this one, Justis. So the band career field puts a lot of energy into making sure that we can disseminate information to all interested applicants out there. All that they simply need to do in this day of age is go to http://www.music.af.mil/auditions. And if they go to that website that begins with www, then they will be able to see all the information that they would need in order to create an awesome audition package, as well as answer any questions they might have.
And I will remind our viewers that audition website that Ed so dutifully spelled out for us is also posted in the description of this video for your convenience. And when you find out about these auditions, you'll find that the first thing you have to do is to submit a pre-screening tape, which is part of qualifying for a live audition. So can you tell us more about how one qualifies for a live audition?
Sure, I'll take that one. So you really have a three-step process to qualifying for the live audition. The very first step is finding out what the pre-screening requirements are. And you'll submit those to the email address that you'll see listed on the requirements letter. And once you pass that pre-screening portion, you will then be directed to visit with your local recruiter. And now, if your local recruiter will do some basic screening to make sure that you would be ready to go for basic military training, some basic health information will be asked, for example. And then once you pass that initial pre-screening plus the recruiter meeting, then you are given an official invite to come on out and audition live for whichever band is hosting that audition.
And while we're talking about finding these vacancies and the website, I want to pull up the Auditions website. This is what the website looks like right here. That you can find this link in the description. And from this website, just go right here to upcoming vacancies. See if I click that. You can see all of our upcoming vacancies, both for regional and premier bands. And you just click the audition materials, audition flyer, audition requirements to learn more. Additionally, right up here on the top left, you'll be able to enter your email address, and that'll put you on the auditions mailing list so you can be notified as new vacancies arise. So quick question from the comments. Kenyon Williamson wants to know, are the winners of the auditions picked solely from the audition, or does the music school matter as well? Michele, would you answer that one for us?
By music school, is this question implying that we have a music school after basic military training, which other branches do, ours does not? Or are they asking about the music school they attended on their resume? So
yeah, I think it's the which one on the resume, which school they went to.
Okay.
Does it matter?
That is such a great question. No, it absolutely does not. In fact, we've had all of the auditions coordinators got together this week and had a great phone conference where part of the discussion was actually saying, do we even need to ask for the resume? Because it's really important to us, not what your resume says, but what we hear. We need to hear that you are qualified to fulfill the performance requirements that the job entails. So the resume really has very, very little to do with that.
Yeah.
And if I could just add on to that,
Please.
too, we've had exceptions in the band that have come from non-academic backgrounds as far as their training goes, and they've got extensive pop background or jazz background. They're experienced church musicians that have played every single style. So like Michele is saying here, we're looking for the experience demonstrated in their pre-screening recordings. And just like with things like the NBA drafts and so forth, there are musicians that are all-stars that are halfway through their college program, and they decide that they can win an audition, and they do, and they go into the career field that way too. So there are lots of unique exceptions to the 4-year program experience.
Great. And another question from the comments. I'll direct this one to you, Leah. If you are in a regional band, is that still your full-time job?
That's one of my favorite questions to answer, actually, because I had this aha moment about it because we as a panel discuss the answers to any questions that you might have, but this one comes up quite frequently, and I had this aha moment that actually, really quickly, any job that you do in the Air Force bands, you would probably end up doing by yourself as a freelance musician. So your primary duty is your instrument. So for my example, my primary duty is vocalizing, is singing. But then my secondary duty is administrative. But that's just the term for all of the different shops that it takes to keep all of our music business in-house. So we have people who schedule and create the tours, who check up on the staging, the different kind of environments to make sure we have everything we need when we get there. We have people to make sure we have the supplies to do what we do. We have us who run the audition shop, who make sure we have qualified candidates and peers to work with. We have finance to make sure we have the funding to be able to go where we need to go and get the classes we need to get. And so yeah, the really cool part about it is, although I do have a desk job, it's stuff that you have to do yourself, but now you have an entire team to help you get that done.
Yeah, absolutely. And in the interest of clarity, we should point out that all of those jobs, like you said, are related to helping the band go round.
Absolutely. And you are social media. So what artist doesn't need to put themselves out there in that way?
Exactly. And we're not going to be called to serve the Air Force in ways that aren't part of our job description as regional bandsmen.
Correct.
Great. Well, one more question from the comments. Have you ever had musicians at or around the age of 18 make it in?
Yes. We had an incredibly talented vocalist, 18 years old, ready to get on that stage. And as Sergeant Von Haugg said, actually, and also Senior Airman Ed Knoeckel, this can be from a 4-year institution, you're ready to hit the ground running, or this can be, I'm ready now. So it really varies. There's no correct road. There are many roads to the Air Force bands. We just want you to be an incredible musician ready to perform.
Great. And one more question about pre-screening while we're on the topic. Michele, Julia is getting ready to submit pre-screening materials and wants to know if she should include a cover letter.
That is absolutely not necessary. The pre-screening requirements indicate the audio materials that you'll need to submit, as well as the resume. It is nice if you send that email and you introduce yourself, but not a formal cover letter. Not necessary.
Yeah, thanks. So more about the pre-screening tape itself. As people are getting ready to record, obviously we're in strange times right now where we might not have access to all of the usual equipment and facilities. So let's talk about the quality of that pre-screening tape. What are you looking for? Does this need to be like a studio quality recording?
May I answer that? Is that okay? So we've had people go into a studio and give us professional recordings, and we've had people sing into their iPhones on voice notes to YouTube karaoke tracks. What we are looking for, pitch, phrasing, and understanding of style, specifically within, I'll speak for the vocal pre-screenings, and those can be, there's no medium that needs to be there to demonstrate that. So I don't want anyone to be discouraged from applying because they go, oh my gosh, I don't have a studio grade microphone. I don't have anyone. It's these times I can't invite anyone to my home to play with me. I can't be there. So I really want to encourage everyone to be able to submit within their means. And if there is some sort of lack of clarity we have on our end, we'll go, hey, can you record this and make sure it's in a bigger room or something like that. We'll always come back with feedback if what you submitted isn't exactly, we can't hear what we're looking for.
Yeah, and of course, important to note that we're all musicians in the same boat in these times. And I love the way you put it, Leah. We're so happy to help people submit within their means. And we would love to hear from anybody, regardless of their technological restrictions. So how about editing the tape? Can you submit a tape with edits on it?
I'll jump in. Actually, as far as everything Leah just said, that's awesome and totally applies for every instrument and vocalist. But I just want to add 3 pointers specifically for, I'm a clarinetist, so I'd say to winds and brass. Please don't edit. Please don't add reverb. And please do try to do your recording in a dead space. So we're just hearing your pure, clean sound, and we're listening, of course, for all of those elements that Leah was referring to.
Yeah, definitely.
I think that Michele is referring to an early Halloween reference here.
And I'll take this chance to remind our viewers, you guys are all watching us here on YouTube. If you go to our videos here on YouTube, you'll find, scroll down a bit, you'll find a video that we created about home recording for musicians, where our non-commissioned officer in charge of productions and one of our trombone players takes you through how to get a quality recording from home, even if you've never done it before. So we're happy to provide that resource, and I encourage you all to check it out if you have to record from home. So we've had the pre-screening, you qualified for a live audition, and you actually win the audition. What happens once you win? I mean, are you committed to joining the Air Force at that time? I'll throw that one.
No.
Yeah, go ahead, Michele.
Sure. So no, not immediately. So you are not fully committed to the Air Force until you raise your right hand and say the oath of enlistment. That can take, typically takes about 6 to 8 months for each candidate to finish their in processing with their recruiter. Now, it can take less time. You know, if you've finished doing all of your MEPS in processing, that's the military, someone help me with that acronym. It's a processing center where you go and do all of your medical screening requirements. Anybody help?
Entrance processing.
Yes, military entrance processing station. Apologies. Some people get through that right away. Other people can take up to 6 to 8 months. But again, you are not fully committed to the job until you raise your right hand.
Yeah, it's. I know it was super comforting to me when I won my audition that there was no pressure to, you know, hey, sign this piece of paper right now. You're in the Air Force. Congratulations. You know, definitely allows for some time after that. More from the comments. For instrumentalists, when they have to do a solo, do they need a piano accompaniment or any kind of backing track? Michele, maybe you can answer that as our instrumentalist here.
Absolutely not.
Totally okay to go unaccompanied.
Yeah, this actually came up with some upcoming tuba auditions questions we had for tuba solos, and Michele had given such great clarity on the requirements there, which is that we're looking for the tubist's natural sound. And so the focus on that is not going to be necessarily all the intricate interaction between accompanist and soloist, but looking for the musicality of the soloist themselves.
Yeah, it makes sense. And actually, Ed, we have a question that would be a great one to hear your perspective on. This question says, how would you compare... Okay, well, how would you compare a position as a vocalist in the Air Force versus the other branches? Ed, you're not a vocalist, but you have served in the United States Army. So I think it'd be great to hear your perspective here.
Sure. So not active duty in the Army, National Guard in the Army, which is a bit of a...
Oh, we may have lost Ed for a second there. Leah, maybe you want to jump in and talk about your experience as a vocalist in the Air Force, and if you've had been able to discuss.
Am I coming in?
Oh, hi, Ed. I was just going to ask Leah for her experience. Yeah, Ed, can you hear us okay?
Yeah, okay.
Awesome.
Am I coming in now?
Yeah. Let's pick up where you left off, Ed, if you wouldn't mind.
So at the time when I entered into the Army National Guard, there was not a shred, as you would say, for vocalists. So what we had were a lot of instrumentalists that were doubling as vocalists, and that could be anyone from the guitarist to the trumpet player. If they had an interest in being a vocalist or some sort of ability, they were usually tasked to be a front person for a rock or pop band, as well as play their instrument. And I should say that there is the distinction also, if you're talking about the Army branch, that musicians are still soldiers first, and they are musicians as part of their job. And in the Air Force career field, we are the position in which we are hired for, and that is our specialty, and that's what we are valued for bringing to the Air Force mission. So in that particular role, there's a large distinction between branches. And just one funny story to kind of bring up. I had just joined the Army National Guard, and within a couple of months, the warrant officer, who was commander of the band, thought that my voice sounded like Jim Morrison. And one of the very first performances I did was to sing a medley of Doors songs with the concert band. And you want to say that these were strange days.
Well, thank you for sharing your experience between the two branches there. And as you mentioned, we're super happy to have vocalists here that are dedicated professional vocalists. And Leah, a good question for you. Are we looking for one vocalist for one specific group? Or, like you're auditioning just for the jazz band, or for someone who can blend in a lot of different settings?
That's a fantastic question. So that's actually, if you're, the answer to this is also the answer between what is the difference between a regional and a premier band. So I'll answer both questions, even though you didn't even ask that one. So for the premier bands, they're going to be looking for a specific type of voice and a specific style. So we have, for example, in DC, Max Impact, they're looking for a rock singer. Right now, they're looking for a male rock singer. And they have Airman Ed Knoeckel. I don't believe they're looking for a vocalist right now, but if they were, that would be just a jazz vocalist. And that would be their bread and butter. So the thing about the regional bands that makes it different is you have to be able to not only wear all of those hats, you have to be able to wear those hats convincingly. So that's why we also say for pre-screenings, make sure you really lean into that genre. So we see that you have a good understanding of the differences between a pop song, a jazz standard, a country song, and a classical piece. I would say for most of our vocalists, that is probably the biggest, I wouldn't say mistake, but the most common trend is that sometimes it's difficult to differentiate between the genres. So if you haven't already submitted and you're going, what's a quick tip? I would definitely make sure to lean into those genres, because we have to be able to know you can go out for a jazz tour, come back, do Don't Stop Believin', and then the next day be able to sing a musical theater tune.
Yeah, so if we have the Band of the West is looking for a vocalist, we're not looking for a vocalist to only be with Dimensions in Blue, our jazz band.
Correct. They would be in many, many groups.
Awesome. Thank you for that. So where are we in the process? You've qualified for the live audition, won the audition. We've established you don't have to join the Air Force that same day, but let's say you've decided to take the job and you are going to join the Air Force. Do you have to go through basic training? Leah, would you take that question?
Yes, absolutely. So yes, you do have to go to basic training. We are an active duty position. You will go to Joint Base San Antonio, which is where we're actually located here at the Band of the West, to complete that. And then it'll be, I'm pretty sure right now it's still 8.5 weeks. And while you're there, you'll learn standard military drill and ceremonies, Air Force history, custom and courtesies, and then daily physical exercises. It's totally manageable. And most of the classes are actually in a brand new facility that absolutely mirrors the collegiate academics. It's really even tiered like some of these classrooms at a college. And you have a textbook and you study. And if you are in the band, you are placed in the drum and bugle corps flight, which means you pick up an instrument while you still have to do drills. While other flights are doing drills, you will also be doing those drills, but you will pick up an instrument to play for not only your graduation, but possibly other people's graduation.
Yeah, that's great insight. I know before I went to basic training, I really had no idea what to expect. And so it's really great to hear that I like the way you put it. It's an extremely manageable experience. And so while you're in basic training and you might be playing with the drum and bugle corps, of course, we're professional musicians, and that doesn't sound like a real substitute for actual practicing. So Michele, as a wind instrumentalist, can you talk about what happens right after basic training? I mean, you're probably not going to be in the same shape, right?
Oh, no. It definitely, as a clarinet player, I wasn't able to take my clarinet to basic training. I wasn't able to play the clarinet in the drum and bugle corps flight. I was, in fact, given a bugle and told to play it. I mean, fortunately, I have a music education background, so I could do that, but I wanted to be a clarinetist, so was a little flustered with the fact that my chops were now going to get screwed up by a brass mouthpiece. However, I have to say the really positive side of that whole experience was that getting out of basic training, I had all that time to really think about who I was as a musician, how I practiced, it was time for old bad habits to start melting away. And when I got to my first duty location, they made it very clear to me that I would not be performing live until I felt my chops were ready to do so. So I was given plenty of time to get my chops back, to be in the practice room, and just to get back in that clarinet space.
Yeah, and this brings up a really good point, a distinction that I think we'd like to draw. Ed, could you answer for us, after basic training, do you have to attend a technical school, any kind of music school?
No, in the Air Force, that is not required. So when you complete basic training, you go straight to your station that you are assigned to. That would be the band. We do have Air National Guard members that will spend some time on what's called OJT, on-the-job training, and they'll enter the band for a brief amount of time to become assimilated into the performance adventure. After basic training, they'll help out the band with some administrative duties, as well as perform and record with the active duty musician members. But for active duty Air Force musicians, you go straight from basic training to the band that you are assigned to. So there is, and like Michele said, there is some understanding that your technical prowess might be dulled just a little bit after coming from basic training, for you to build those skills back up again to your previous standard.
Thanks, Ed. Let's jump back to the comments for a bit. Leslie in Altoona wants to know, if you're already enlisted, do you need to talk to your commander if selected? And if you need to talk to your commander, when would that happen in the process?
You know what? That might be a good one for me to take, considering our prior service information we just received. So if you're currently serving in the Air Force, yes, you absolutely can go to your commander and ask for a release statement, a commander's statement of release from your contract. to be able to take the audition and hopefully win the audition. That's only if you're currently wearing an active duty Air Force uniform. Other than that, and I'm saying this because we've had a lot of prior service applicants. If you are currently wearing the uniform in the Army, as in the Navy, in any branch, if you're active, if you're Guard, if you have ever worn a uniform in the past, unfortunately, the prior service window is closed. What that means is that the Air Force at large, this is a decision unfortunately, way beyond our reach. But if you have at any point ever served in the military, currently the active duty Air Force has decided that they will only be taking in civilians.
But those currently wearing Air Force uniforms would be able to audition and just need to talk to their commander.
Correct.
Before applying to take the audition.
Yes, but not if you're wearing an Air National Guard uniform.
And could you expound on that a little bit, Air National Guard?
So Air National Guard is essentially part-time Air Force, 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks a year. So that if you wanted to go from the Air National Guard to the active duty Air Force, you would actually have to separate from that contract and then re-enlist in the active duty Air Force. So you're considered prior service.
Makes sense. Okay, question from the comments here. If you're going to perform a solo for your pre-screening tape that isn't on the recommended list but is of the same caliber, how much of it do you need to perform? How much of that solo? Michele, you probably have the most experience with concertos and things.
Oh, my apologies. Yes, I broke up a little bit there.
Oh,
So if you see those pre-screening requirements, and if it specifically says you may choose one of these excerpts, one of these solos, or comparable, yes, absolutely. If you see one of the excerpts is a march, for example, and in the pre-screening requirements, it actually says there that you may choose these or something comparable. Yes, go ahead and replace it with a different march if there's one that you're stronger at, more comfortable with. And the same thing applies to concertos. Just make sure that you choose a concerto that is comparable to the one that is on that pre-screening list.
And how much of that concerto would a candidate be expected to perform for the pre-screening tape?
Just the exposition only, please.
It's just the main exposition. Quick clarification, if you wouldn't mind, Michele. You mentioned the Air National Guard. Do those restrictions apply to members of the Air Force Reserves as well? Question from the comments.
Yes, unfortunately, they do.
I see. Thank you. So now that we've discussed this, audition process from how to find the audition to what happens when you win and go through basic training, I'd like to know, and I want to hear from each of you, what advice you would have for someone who is preparing for an Air Force Band's audition, either the pre-screening or the live audition. And let's hear from Ed first. Your take as a rhythm section player, the advice you'd have for someone preparing for an audition.
Sure. So one of the deficiencies that we often see for musicians coming to the audition process is an understanding of traditional piano playing, and that with it has a certain perception of timing and rhythm. There's typically an ebb and flow of fluidity to the rhythmic concepts in that style of playing. However, when you go from the traditional classical style of playing into the other genres and the other styles, examples like funk or swing, bebop, jazz, and popular, you have now a multifaceted spectrum of perceptions of time. So I would say to understand very much for the applicants their unique concepts of rhythm and timing as they traverse across these different styles and genres. If they can demonstrate that they understand those particular concepts, it'll speak volumes to their playing. For example, they don't need to necessarily come in and be a prodigious player and sweep across all 88 keys in these grand fluid motions. But if they can understand that they can play in the pocket within each of these particular styles, they'll demonstrate their value tenfold.
Well, thanks for that. And it looks like you're blowing Leah's mind a little bit, talking about the perceptions of time and.
Oh, we could get deep into
I
the
know.
psychology.
Yeah, you and I could go back and forth all day. So, Leah, as a vocalist, what advice would you have for someone preparing for an audition? What can someone do to really set their pre-screening tape apart from a lot of the other ones that we receive?
So really quickly, the three things that come into mind. First, what I said before, being able to have a really confident access to all those different genres and be able to wear those hats. Second, this seems obvious, but I really want everyone who is submitting their vocal audition pre-screening to focus on the center of the pitch. That is definitely going to come in handy, especially if you get invited to the live audition, playing with a live band. If you seem to be someone who heads up or down and not quite at the center, it's gonna be difficult. It's gonna be difficult. And one thing I want to remind people is you are auditioning for a military band. I sort of threw myself into this process, and when I got there, I have been told it was an unusually large panel, but I was performing for 10 to 15 people in uniform. And I don't know how I had sort of forgotten it, but it was very intimidating. I was like, oh, so just really keep that in mind, that everyone will be in uniform, and it seems very daunting, but we are all musicians. We have all stood where you stood. And if I remember at one point in my audition, I was like, I am just going to be my most best self. And they'll either accept me or they won't. And they did, and they welcomed me with open arms. And yes, I guess just keep in mind not to be so intimidated by the uniform.
All right, well, we're all musicians just like our candidates. So for a wind instrumentalist, Michele, any advice you'd have for the pre-screening tape or the live audition?
Absolutely. For both, I would recommend you reach out to the people in your instrument, your community of your instrument, and ask them to listen to you. Specifically, put that tape together. Go ahead and send it to the committee that is receiving those tapes. Send it 6 weeks early and ask if they'll listen to it and give you feedback. You might not hear anything back, but you might get some feedback. Don't feel bad about saying, hey, would you be willing to give me feedback? This isn't my actual submission yet. And you either know somebody that's already in one of the branches, or someone you know knows someone through your instrument. It's a very small community. Talk to them about listening to your tape before you submit it, and really get all of that advice before you send that in. And then when it comes to the live audition, you have to practice that audition over and over and over. As terrifying as it is to gather people up and put them in a room and have them listen to you run down your audition, as a wind player, as a brass player, when we get nervous, this starts to go. Things start to tighten up, and if you can practice having that anxiety, that nervous anxiety, those nerves in front of people, not only are you going to get their great feedback, but you're going to be able to play your best while having all of that heightened nervous energy happening.
Yeah, that's definitely great advice for all musicians, certainly. So thanks for sharing your perspective. And since we're talking about the live audition, I want to take a second and show you a scene from a recent audition that we held here at the Band of the West. On your screen now is that's our main concert band rehearsal room. And all the way on the left, you can see, actually, that's Michele giving instructions to the candidate who's seated sort of right behind her. And the reason I want to put this up here is, of course, we're dealing with what we certainly hope is the downward tail of a pandemic, but we do take these precautions very seriously. You can see in front of the candidate a plexiglass screen to prevent aerosols from moving forward towards the panel, who are all seated behind the blue curtain you see in the middle. Everyone, as you can see, a little small, but you can see everyone is wearing masks. And against the back wall, you see the accompanying musicians. I think it's a jazz combo for a trumpet audition. And as you see, they are all physically distanced, all masked as well. And we are taking every precaution to ensure the safety of our members who are there and the candidates as well. So only a few more questions for today. Once you've won this audition and you're in the Air Force, I mean, we do sign contracts. We sign enlistment contracts. What's that contract like? I mean, exactly how binding are we talking about? Michele? Oh, well, I suppose this is what happens when you take the headphones out. Leah, would you mind talking to us a bit about the contract and signing that first and that initial enlistment contract?
So someone actually recently asked me yesterday, what is the difference for a 4 and a 6 year contract? And so the very light answer is that if you do not have a college degree, if you are able to sign a 6 year contract, you are able, usually, if I'm not mistaken, to come in as an A1C. That is the idea, that you are above the lower pay grading. And when, I don't know if I'm exactly hitting the question on the head, but how I'm interpreting the question is, do you have room for a life outside of the Air Force as a musician? And to address that, absolutely. I'm an equity actress, and I got into a show here in San Antonio. And as long as that show does not conflict with the Air Force mission, my primary duty, my job to sing and show up for tours or whatever video shoots, we are able to do that. We have band members who have their own bands outside. They're able to gig when COVID doesn't have restrictions. They're able to gig in Austin. They're able to have a full life outside of the Air Force. So if that's how you mean by binding, but I'm not exactly sure if that was the answer to that question, but yeah, okay, Michele has her, Sergeant Von Haugg has her earphones back in.
Did you ask the question, is this a binding contract?
Well, yeah.
Or how binding, I believe was.
So the contract is typically 4 to 6 years, the initial enlistment, but there's a but in there. There are opportunities to audition for the premier bands, whether it be in the Air Force or one of the sister services. And sometimes we do have something called a palace chase, whereby if there's something that comes up for your family, or maybe you get a great orchestral opportunity and you want to ask the Air Force, can I get out of my active duty enlistment early so that I can go take this job with this great orchestra? And yes, there is an opportunity for that. So while the contract is 4 to 6 years, there are worked in possibilities to find your way to a different direction if that's what you really choose to seek.
Although we should point out it's exceedingly rare, as the vast majority of people who make it through the audition process, I think, find a happy home here. Ed, as a rhythm section player, are you able to take musical opportunities outside of the Air Force, be they gigs or auditions or other things, while you're still under contract?
Oh, definitely, Justice. Yes, there are lots of opportunities. What's maybe unique from a National Guard experience when you're in the active duty is that unless you are on tour over a weekend, you typically will have a weekend that's open for you to be involved with community ensembles, community production groups, theater groups. Jazz club gigs are usually packed around here with Air Force jazz musicians, and also with musicians who are involved with church music. having the weekends very often open allows them to be involved in that kind of a religious community.
Yeah, it's important to note too that having our professional musicians out and about in the community only does further service to the Air Force, as we're able to represent as active community members. And I know we definitely take great pride in that.
For sure.
Another question from the comments: what do you usually have vocalists prepare for the live portion of the audition?
So we will often ask, when you think top 40, I would just like to recommend you're not literally Googling top 40. I think more of like top 40 things that you might hear at a parade or a wedding or a classic rock radio station. Stuff that really amps people up, that's still family friendly and appropriate. We all love Billie Eilish, but it's very rare that we perform something like that. So we'll have you do a musical theater piece or something that's your bread and butter. And then we'll have you sing the national anthem, again, live for us, a cappella. Again, please, no ornamentation, including scoops and little runs. Even as a vocalist, you think you know what's on the page, but really check again. And then you will be performing if you're invited to the second round. So after that, we'll sort of hear your sound and see, should we move them on to play with a small group, and you'll play with a rock group, a small ensemble who's also able to put on the hats of a jazz ensemble. It'll be the same ensemble, especially now we want to really limit the manning because of exposing. We really want to, we're really diligent about this. So that same group will play a jazz standard with you, or a few jazz standards, and a pop rock song. If that answers your question.
Yeah, when you say, I mean, they're going to be asked to perform something jazz and something rock, something country. But do we provide a song list or a selection you can choose from, or is it like a list and you're going to be expected to sing all of them?
Correct. It's a list, and you'll be expected to sing all of them, and that will be sent to you 6 to 8 weeks prior to your audition, so you will have plenty of time to have that.
Are the keys flexible for those selections?
So for the jazz tunes, they are often selectable, but for the pop tunes, they may not be selectable. It depends what tune is chosen on our band side. But if you're like, absolutely no way, just please contact us. And we will try and figure out a way, because we want everybody to be heard in their best light. But there are classics like Don't Stop Believin', which you can't really, it's just so memorable and in your ear, it's really difficult to change the keys of something like that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Certainly not that everybody needs to sing Don't Stop Believin', but
everyone needs to sing Don't Stop.
Exactly. That's great. Yes, your rhythm section players and music arranger thank the vocalists for not tampering with too many keys. But yeah, you're right, absolutely right, Leah. If you're invited to the live audition, it's for a reason. It's because we want to hear you, and like you say, we want to hear you in your best light. Leah, unmute yourself.
I think that's very much aligned with how our actual operations go, in the sense where my NCOIC, my NCO in charge, and my music director go, is this a good key? Great. Or we really can't change this key. So it's a great mirror of how it actually works in real time, and how the job actually works.
Yeah, that's a really excellent point. Definitely how it works on the job. Well, I'd like to take this chance to remind all of our viewers that this is episode 3 of our auditions question and answer sessions. And in previous episodes, we talked about the musicians. That is the type of people that typically wind up winning our jobs, and sort of the general profile of those people. We talked in episode 2 about the music that we play, what our programming is like, the venues that we get to play in. And Here in episode 3, we're talking mainly about the audition itself, the pre-screening, the audition process, and everything leading up to day 1 on the job. We are going to have a few more episodes of question and answer sessions. So I encourage you now, if you haven't already, to hit subscribe here on our YouTube channel, so you're notified the next time we go live to answer your questions about joining an Air Force band. You can also follow us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram. Those links are in the description of the video, and as well as a link to our auditions website where you can find information about current vacancies and more frequently asked questions about the audition process and being here in the bands. So with that, we're going to take the chance to sign off on episode 3 of our live stream auditions question and answer session. Again, if you think of anything that you want to ask after the stream ends, again, feel free to drop it in the comment section, and I will make sure that one of our auditions panel members here that you see gets back to you as soon as possible. Thanks so much for tuning in. Auditions team, thanks for being with us.